and thank you for being here late in the afternoon on day one at MetalCon. I think it's been a great show so far, great traffic. Hope you're finding it of great value. And this session we're excited about. We have some industry experts and industry leaders here today from different segments of the industry, and they're able to share their perspective from their positioning in the industry today. So we'll start with a few standard questions and bounce around through the panel, and then at the end we'll certainly take questions from the audience, or if there's anything burning in your mind that you need an answer to, please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get you a mic and you can ask the question. But first we'll start with introductions, so I'll start on the far end.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Partica. I'm the Vice President of Carlisle Architectural Metals, and we have two brands. One brand is Peterson Aluminum, and the other is Drexel Metals. And I'm also the chairman of the MCA. So thanks for being here. We appreciate all your support.
Good afternoon, everybody. Paul Trombitas with FMI, a partner in our strategy practice. And for those of you not familiar with FMI, we're a management consulting and investment banking firm. We work exclusively with firms in the construction industry, or what we call built environment. And so we work with firms on growth, on performance, and market diligence. And so I was involved on the market sizing and research for MCA on metal roof and walls, and happy to be here.
Thanks, Paul. I'm Tom Seitz. I'm the Executive Director of the MCM Alliance, which represents the manufacturers, fabricators, and suppliers of our industry. Got about 45 years experience, and hope we can share some of that experience.
And I'm Sean McHugh, Director of Marketing and Planning at Precoat Metals. At Precoat, we're the largest toll coater of pre-painted metal or coil-coated metal in the world. So we have a very big interest in what's happening in the markets, and it's my responsibility to kind of look at what's happening from a macroeconomic standpoint and try and use that to explain how we're performing to the street.
Thank you. My name is Bob Zapchik. I'm the Technical Director of the Metal Construction Association. I work in conjunction with another gentleman you might know, Andy Williams. He's our Code and Standards Manager. I'm an independent consultant. MCA is my nearest and dearest client. We've worked together both. I was a member and actually on the board before I left my corporate job and joined in as staff. My background's primarily engineering, was a design engineer in the metal construction, metal building industry, was involved with MBMA from the beginning of my career, and worked for all through ranks of a major manufacturer, left there in 2018 as a Director of Research and Development. I worked for a solar technology company focused on BIPV for 2 years. I actually had P&L responsibility, so I was kind of moved away from the technical side, but then I was still wound up because of our very unique problems on tops of roofs that we're all familiar with. We focused a lot on product development. But now really for MCA, I'm primarily focused on codes and standards and running our technical program and research, and hopefully I can bring some perspective for where we're looking in terms of codes and standards and technology today as well. So thank you, I appreciate being here.
Well, thank you all. So I guess we'll start with just kind of a general state of the industry. What are we seeing and experiencing today in the marketplace? And Brian, I know Carlisle has considerable reach across the construction industry. And from where you stand, what are you seeing as far as market conditions today?
Yeah, I think if you start with just, let's talk about architectural billings, right? So that's kind of a good forward indicator of what's happening in the market. August is the last number that we have, and it fell below 50. So anything that's below 50 is typically, we're not growing as an industry. So a couple things that I just brought some notes. So sluggish is the term that Kermit used when he heard about the architectural and billing index. However, it's not all doom and gloom. We're seeing quite a bit of project inquiry index as well as above 50. So that means that there's a lot of projects that are being planned now that just haven't. We kind of hit that COVID lull maybe. But we're seeing quite a bit of opportunity on the commercial construction side. Residential is the part that is struggling a little bit. Multifamily construction and the architectural billing index is just under 45. So that's showing us that it's quite a bit, the residential market's obviously being impacted quite a bit. But if I were to give you some stats, the Northeast, New England markets, the Mid-Atlantic markets, that is currently above 50. The is right at 50. The Midwest is 48, and the West is 46. So if you're looking at pockets, you're seeing some slowdown, more so on the in the western states than you have seen. Paul, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just to build on that. Certainly on the residential side, single family seeing a slowdown, particularly with the interest rates and affordability. What an interesting stat that came out from the Census Bureau recently is the average home size in the U.S. is at the lowest it's been in 10 years. And what we're seeing a lot of builders on that side retool for lower cost inputs. So we're seeing that as a challenge certainly in the industry, but looking to the non-residential side, I'm sure everybody here has heard, the CHIPS Act driving a lot of growth in the industrial space, particularly the large EV, large battery facilities. And so from 2022 to 2023, we saw about a 40% increase in industrial construction. Moving forward, we see that slowing down, particularly as these multi-billion-dollar projects come to fruition and move forward. Some of the other bright spots that we see are really education, driven by or strengthened by IRA funding, particularly around energy retrofits, energy efficiency, and then on the healthcare side, we see a number of large expansion projects, and then a return to the outpatient facilities, and that being an area of growth. And then I'm sure Sean and I had a good discussion the other day about data centers. You almost can remove that from the office segment because it is going to be growing over the next 5 years at an astronomical rate. We see right now with the adoption of AI, the processing power required in a data center to be 10x. So the densification and demand on these facilities is it's unlike we've seen before, and so we see multiple billions being poured into that space as well. So there's certainly pockets of growth, and we like to say that bull and bear markets coexist, and that depends on what segments you are in and where you are geographically. But certainly, to your point, Brian, that residential certainly challenged.
And that kind of fits into the same schedule that we're seeing with the MCM market. A lot of times it fits very well into that data side, since we're a very high-tech, cool-looking building with that look that we have it with composites. That fits right well in that space. So the industrial side, we don't play in that market too much, but it's the commercial side. And since the office building side of it's going to be kind of sliding down a little bit, they've got an overabundance of it. And we got some code changes that are happening for us in certain markets. So a little lighten up in certain markets and get stronger in other markets. So it's going to be very interesting. And as FMI had indicated to us also, that our CAGR moving forward through 27 is going to be about 4.5, which is pretty good information for us in looking ahead to the future. So strong market.
Sean, I know that, and Paul mentioned it, we had a conversation about interest rates and the impact on that. And I know you love statistics and trend a lot of things.
Yeah.
But in addition, he also mentioned something else, and I don't know if you have information on this. But he talked about, or alluded to office vacancy rates and what impact that may have on the industry going, currently or moving forward.
When I hear the sluggishness, and I mean, certainly we're seeing it, but the good news or the glass half full look on some of these things is that we're going to start comping against when things started to go bad last year. And when you start looking at the year-over-year comps, all of a sudden it's like, the spending really fell off a cliff when interest rates started to skyrocket, but we're going to be comparing against that soon. One of the areas that it's the easiest story to tell, everyone bought an RV during COVID, and I know that this is related to metal buildings, but we supply a lot to the RV market, and when you see a 70% drop year over year in RV, you can't have that again a year later. You can't have 70% and then another 70%. So I look at some of the things, and you can even look at single-family housing starts. You're now seeing month-over-month increases, and that's pretty much driven by the people that have those sub 3% mortgages right now are never going to sell, and as a result, they've got to start building smaller, more affordable houses, but you're seeing housing starts increase, and I'm interested to see how the people that are now never going to sell their houses because they're locked into low mortgages, what decisions are they going to make when it comes to re-roofing their house? Because previously, maybe you would kick the can down the road or you would just replace with asphalt. But if you're never going to sell that house, you might change that buying behavior. So that's something that, that's the glass half full side of this story.
I'll just weigh in real quickly. I'm not a market expert, but I play one on TV. But what we have seen, right? I mean, how often in this, a lot of us been in the industry a long time. I have. How often have we seen? It's either a great market or it's a bad market, right? It's actually always in between. There's always parts that you focus on. So that actually is where I can bring in a little bit of perspective. I think we're going to see more of a focus on residential, like we traditionally, retrofit as we shift away from new construction and energy retrofits, and even, starting to see some carbon retrofits, people changing out materials to get better operational carbon. So those are market segments that nobody really tracks because it could be in any occupancy or in any region, but we're beginning to see a lot of those very specific types of markets begin to develop, and so that I think is one thing I would add, that it's always a mixed bag.
Yeah, how many contractors do we have here? Show of hands. How's your backlog? Is it steady? Right? So, same as last year, right? So that's what we're seeing, right? Backlogs are still there. Mm-hmm. It's how much work is being bid in the future, right? So are you guys seeing an uptick in your bids? Are you seeing kind of steady or slow, or what's
a lot of pre-construction?
A lot of pre-construction, right? So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom, right? The work is going to be there. It's just we got to make sure we wait for it. It's kind of a cycle in the timing of it all.
Yeah, the industry, like many others, struggled with supply chain issues in the pandemic and coming out of it. Are we past that time? Are supply chain challenges still existing in some areas? Are they still relevant? Do we have
supply chain challenges? I don't know anything. I think we're headed there. I think there's still quite a bit of inventory in the pipe, but I do think that things are more stable today than they have been. I hope that 2024 is going to be a boring year from a timing standpoint. Just the amount of the fluctuation in steel prices and the availability of steel prices. And we thought the auto workers strike was going to impact steel more than it has. Steel's kind of leveled off a little bit. So, but not a lot of inventory out there. Everybody's needing inventory now. So we're going to see a little spike towards the end of this year, I think, with just extended lead time. So as you guys are looking at projects, just be patient with your suppliers and make sure you give them enough notification so we can get out ahead of any supply chain. But plenty of availability in the market right now.
Our industry had a real challenge during the pandemic in the early stages with the lithium aspects for PVDF, and that really impacted our manufacturers to getting paint. And so that. I think we have gone through that. The paint manufacturers have worked our way through it, and we're back on. But it was touch and go there for a while. So hopefully that's well behind us.
Another one on the paint side, I agree with you that PVDF availability is there now, but black pigment was hard to come by at points and times last year. And I don't know what you guys are building, but we're seeing a tremendous uptick in dark colors, or really just black colors. I think this whole modern farmhouse movement is, black trims, black garage doors, just black everything. And it comes at a time, of course, when black pigment's hard to get. And believe it or not, you need black pigment to make white paint. So it was really a pain.
So it kind of flies in the face of the cool roof stuff, right? They're looking for the darker walls, and that's what's interesting about that is that actually metal really does a great job in the darker colors maintaining those reflectivities. So I'd add that from a technical standpoint. But I think from our standpoint, what we've seeing a lot is more involvement with people in the participation and development of the codes and standards to try to set those, almost like protect their areas, and that's a big part of what we can continue to monitor that and work with them when they can help us, and well, frankly, oppose them when it can hurt us. We'll continue to do that.
It's hard to have a conversation today without about building construction without talking about sustainability and decarbonization. Some other industries are out in front of metal today on those topics, and what actions does the metal industry need to take to protect its positioning and communicate its attributes and be sure we're protected moving forward?
We go in same order?
Anybody willing to take the question?
I can take that. So yeah, ESG is a really important component, especially us being a large publicly traded company. So investors are looking at us to make sure that we're making positive impacts on the environment. So we adopted some ANSI standards that we absolutely need to, all based on reducing greenhouse gases, reducing waste. We have this great story to be told about recyclability in our industry that we seem to promote quite a bit here, but I don't think other competing industries are taking that for real, because there's a lot of talk with the concrete guys and also the wood industry as well, saying about how their deforestation, right, Bob? You mentioned it at the, what was the stat that they used? You mentioned it at the board meeting the other day.
I'm sorry,
as far as wiping out all the trees, but saying that they're sustainable.
Oh, yeah. I was listening to an expert talk about this, actually. It's really more of a humorous thing than anything, but it's worth bringing up. You know, he was lamenting over the carbon problem. He just said, you know, if we just had these things that we could put in our homes, maybe in our yards, that would, you know, take carbon dioxide and make oxygen out of it, you know, and maybe give us some shade. And so where I'm going with that is that there are people out there, and respected people, researchers, who honestly believe the answer to the building carbon problem is to eradicate all forests, make wood structures out of those trees, and grow new forests. And I'm not the brightest person in the world, but I know when somebody's telling me something that I shouldn't believe, and that's one I'm buying into. That's going to create all kinds of problems with our environment, with our habitat, erosion. Good Lord, I'd hate to even think about it. And I think what we're doing, and we can focus on this, and really education is the key. We need to discourage people from looking at carbon in a vacuum, pardon the pun, or CO2 in a vacuum, but really the whole situation, considering that as part of your environmental impact, and that's exactly what LCA does, life cycle assessment. We've worked very hard in this industry, both to document and create our data, produce this data in an industry standard or an ISO standard format, make it available. We share it with people. We work with AISI. They're doing the same thing. And what you'll find if you look at how this data changes from year to year to year, we're doing a really good job of carbon reduction, by the way. A really, really good job. And other thing to mention, just coming from another presentation, when you build out a metal and it lasts longer, those are carbon impacts, you actually spread that over the life of the building. So you just have to pay attention to the numbers and the data and really kind of put on your science hat and try to figure this out. If you're just going through these material selection processes, picking things with the lowest carbon, you're going to get probably the wrong answer.
I'd add two other emerging trends. They're not even really emerging. They already exist in other industries, but it's going to definitely impact us. And that's eventually going chrome-free on pretreatments. That's something that's happening in Europe already. It's very reasonable that just happens with a stroke of a legislative pen. And I think that the paint companies and certainly the coil coaters are prepared for that when it happens. And I think that there's going to be an ability to do so without it impacting the life of the building. So that's one. The other is electron beam curing. Imagine kind of a start-stop coil coating line that would just, at the end of the line, you'd put a clear over the coating that's there today. And this is a big deal. It's something that's, there's a lot of people developing these coatings, but to throw a clear over a silicon-modified polyester or a PVDF will just further enhance the capabilities of the coatings already. So this is something that's probably a decade away, but it's something that's very real, and I look at it coming online probably as done at the end of the coil line, just to clear over the top. So those are two things.
Hey, Sean, are those two interrelated? So when we use chrome-free products, we don't get the same performance. Are you recommending that we, at least historically, we haven't gotten the same performance?
I think that what's going to happen, so the idea of it being a clear, that's pretty much fully baked already. Reason being the cross-linking of this final product. And I'm not a paint guy, but I was. The cross-linking's so good that it's very hard to recoat. And so you couldn't imagine it being a primer. But imagine that there is some performance drop-off from chrome-free. You could certainly more than offset that by having a clear over the top. So far, these things, when it's EB cured and it's for a top coat, it doesn't match the performance that, from a warranty perspective, that you can get with the current technology. And from that standpoint, even if it's 100% solids and incredibly environmentally friendly, the life cycle analysis would say that it wouldn't be favorable because you'd be replacing the building too frequently. So, but we could be moving to the million-mile tire if you start putting clear over top of PVDF or something like that.
Good, thanks. And Bob, any changes on the code side of?
Well, I was actually going to follow up. You mentioned something about the chrome-free pretreatment. So, if you look at certain tests like B119, yeah, sure, ASTM B119, it doesn't. Those aren't there. The question now has come up, and it's a good one to ask: is that a representative test of what a roof or what a wall, what is actually going to experience in its life? And there's actually been quite a bit of research done on this in the paint industry as well as the coating industry. So we're in the process of kind of developing, or actually taking older tests and kind of tweaking them, because really what a building sees, wet-dry cycles, and it sees thermal changes, right? It's not seeing a constant mist of salt spray. And so they're looking at taking the results of those tests and comparing them to real-world exposures, and what they're finding is chrome-free actually performs pretty well. It's just a question of we need to adjust the tests that we use to evaluate the performance of the paint system.
I don't think our supply chain is completely ready for chrome-free either, right? I mean,
they're doing it in Europe. They're doing it in Europe in certain areas. It would take a little while, but it's not. It's not. We're not 5 years away from being able to pull the trigger. If someone held a legislative gun to our head as an industry, we'd be able to figure it out.
Good. Well, yeah. I think a lot of this is related to, are you guys bidding any jobs that are, green globes or any of the other red list type activities? So this is really where it impacts you as a contractor.
IFLI is a big one.
What is it?
IFLI, Living Building Challenge.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, just from an overall industry, what we're seeing with several of our clients is there's very large publicly traded companies have made pledges that they're going to focus on lowering embodied carbon in their construction projects. And we've had clients that are going into interviews, and the chief sustainability officer for that organization is sitting in on that interview, and the first question they're getting asked is, how are you addressing embodied carbon on this project? And 2 years ago, we had a client in the middle of the interview go, what is embodied carbon? And so we've seen a big transition now. We have several owners that are pushing more towards that. You have Heinz, major developer that has an entire internal process for how to evaluate products that are lower in embodied carbon. But then you have the other side of the market where it's the dollar-driven developers that if it costs $1 more per square foot, they're not going to focus on it. So we're seeing two sides of the coin on this in the marketplace, but we see a lot of the education institutions, the healthcare, and a lot of these larger tech firms really place an emphasis there on products that are focusing, that have EPDs that are focusing on lower embodied carbon.
Yeah, Paul, Precoat was recently bought by a publicly traded company, and we're going through the whole ESG cycle right now. And in my role, I was asked, what areas do we sell into that are considered to be ESG friendly, that we could just report that out? And my initial argument that 100% of our sales are ESG friendly. And when you think about it and the work that you all do, I'll use an example. We painted a new 220,000 square foot building that we're building for ourselves. It took 6 hours. If you were to post paint that, do you know how much paint you would use and how long it would take? And then also, that building's gonna last 40, 50 years just based on the warranties that are written. And the coatings are so thin, like the stuff that Carlisle sells, you're talking about a 40-year warranty on a product where the coating is as thin as the cellophane on a pack of cigarettes. I mean, it's really remarkable. And to think about what the alternatives could be, everything that we're doing is ESG friendly.
In our industry, in the MCM side of it, we're waiting for all these manufacturers to give us that material that fits into these sustainable items too. Because we don't do anything with our manufacturers are working with the paint companies, with the aluminum companies to try and figure out what's going on here. Our biggest thing in the aluminum is we use less aluminum than, say, a plate company. So that helps our position a little better in that scenario. So but we have to wait and see how it filters down to us.
Yeah, we can anticipate there'll be considerable more regulation around reporting numbers, be it either at the state level, getting more actively involved in the regulatory environment.
I think we have them mic'd up.
Yeah. As well as product specific and source specific even for that product. So that's a lot of evolution and change to be expected there. But we talked a little bit about some coatings that may come to the market. Where else is the industry seeing innovation or have opportunity for innovation moving forward?
So for one that I know that is very interesting, I get involved with from time to time, the American Iron and Steel Institute. There have been some fantastic high-strength steels developed mostly by the automotive industry. And normally when you are evaluating different types of steel to use in a certain application, you look at ductility, you look at toughness. You don't just yield strength's important, but that's not the only thing you look at. You have things, other aspects like fatigue you've got to design for. Well, the automotive industry's addressed a lot of these kind of things, and they're using them in very high performance steels, and probably the car you're driving around today. But what we haven't seen is those technologies make their way into construction. And AISI has been working very hard to make that happen. So I'm not going to get into too much detail because I'll eat up all time, but really what it comes down to, there's high strength steels and then there's high strength, high ductility steels that are really more alloyed. And working with the steel industry and getting those down in cost so that they can be used actually results in less steel being used for the building. So those are aspects I'm sure we're going to see. I think we're also going to see additional advancements in coating reflectivity. That continues to be a pretty important aspect in controlling heat island effects and things of that nature. And hopefully, a lot of this innovation will actually happen in how we collect the data, how we analyze it, the standards that we put it against. Because right now, we're married to ISO, in the lack of anything else, or we're married to a lot of ISO standards that were developed in Europe. Not that there's problems with that, but it's not necessarily unique to our challenges in our markets here in the United States of America. And I think we'll actually see, hopefully, a lot of innovation in those standards areas so we can have data collection and analysis that's done that is open and fair, transparent, and then pass that data to the design community, and then they can use it to comply with these issues and regulations that we're seeing to come about.
Good. Yeah.
I wanted to pass it to you to talk about the speed of installation and ease of installation and innovation along those lines.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. First, let me just address what Bob was just saying. How many folks install residential roofing here? Anybody? Right? So, the largest purchaser of residential roofing in the United States? You know who it is? Allstate, State Farm, all the insurance companies, mostly because of hail. And so, we can make dent-resistant fenders for side doors when people open your door and smash into your car door, right? But to Bob's point, we're not able to make a dent-resistant metal roof. So there's some things that we can do to improve. And really, the reason why the hail is important is that $16 billion, I think it was spent last year on hail replacement. $16 billion in re-roofing. So it's big numbers, right? And it's not the hail, like the hail will punch holes in the asphalt shingle, right? But the rains that follow a hailstorm and just flood out your property is really the challenge. So we have this great product that it doesn't penetrate, but it dents. And your insurance claim or your premiums are often looked at as saying, okay, you know what? Yeah, we'll give you a premium reduction if you put a metal roof on your house. The challenge is nobody wants a dented roof. Right? So then the homeowner makes the investment. They get all upset because they just made this double 2x investment on their home, and then they replace it with an asphalt shingle that looks a lot nicer because it's not dented, right? So we have a great opportunity. As far as speed of installation, I mean, I can talk about quite a bit of, we're seeing a lot more nail flange clip systems on the residential side than we've ever had before. We're seeing some labor savings as far as underlayment products, insulation products. So I mean, it's just, that's the biggest threat we have, is making sure that we can get folks off the roof quickly and get the product installed quickly. So I think from an innovation standpoint, there's quite a bit of work being done around coatings, new technologies. Anybody install any wood grain prints? So we're making metal siding and roofs that look like wood, which is great. There's some technology with powder coating that's happening right now. So this is a really exciting time to be a part of our industry.
The other aspect of change in this innovation is unitizing our systems, and that's saving labor also, to your point. So we're looking for ways out there, but a lot of fabricators are now making larger and larger panels to install them in the field. And I've been involved with unitized systems since the mid-'80s for custom curtain wall systems, but now it's filtered down into this industry. So I think that's another aspect of savings ahead.
You mentioned speed of installation, but modular construction and the impact on that moving forward. Yeah, be a segment that continues to grow, or a trend that continues to grow in time as well.
Paul, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly enough, had a conversation with some folks in Hawaii, and they have a pretty massive housing shortage. They had the fires that caused quite a devastation related to the homes. And so one of the things that they're looking at is, how do we get modular construction to better address our demands and needs of the housing marketplace. We're seeing a significant uptick on the modular side, particularly in California. You have Factory OS is a big player there. You have California Modular. And so I think in the last 10 years we've seen, now modularization, prefabrication has been around for a long time, but it's really gained a lot more attractiveness in the market as with the housing shortages, the speed, the market, and it's not necessarily the cost savings, it's more around the speed, the market, and the efficiency that's gained in doing this in a controlled environment where we're able to get the product out quicker is where they're seeing the benefit. So we continue to see firms getting involved more on the modular side, as well as prefabrication, from panelization to bringing roll forming in-house. So we see a lot of that activity in the market.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is we've seen an uptick in our business with guys owning portable roll forming machines that are going out to the job site and rolling panels as opposed to ordering them from us in our factory. So we're seeing that trend, just giving better controls to the contractor at the job site as opposed to waiting on suppliers like us to deliver it in weeks rather than in days. So that's another thing we're seeing quite a bit of the trend shifting. Mostly on roof panels, I would say. On wall panels, it's not happening quite there. But although, Tom, you do see a lot of MCM fabricators, right, that are doing a lot of their
fabrication might be done in the field.
Yeah, but for the most part, they're fabricating it in their shop. Yep.
That portable roll former, the growth and proliferation of that, it's also a sustainability piece too, because you don't have to, you're not shipping as much air. You can ship a coil and a regional and a portable roll former rather than stacking a bunch of panels that would maybe be less efficient. So that's a sustainability piece we skipped over.
Yeah, I think it was this last stat we looked at is you can ship 12,000 or 16,000 square feet per truckload of finished panels, 16 inches wide, versus 53,000 square feet of coil, right?
So, actually, I had a question for you, Paul. So, when you say modular, are you including auxiliary dwelling units, ADUs? Is that kind of the same market?
Yeah.
So, this links back to Jeff's question. Challenges for actually what Brian just mentioned as well. Those kind of things going through our traditional permitting process don't work very well, right? Yeah. And so we've run into those issues. Those are issues that we can work as an association to help clear. but we've got to innovate how we do building permits. We've got to innovate how we rate, and score these things on their accessibility to serve the parts of society we're trying to help, right? If we make an ADU so expensive that someone who's can't afford a house can't get it, it kind of defeats the purpose. So I really think we have a lot of innovation still to do, just basic things. How do you get a permit? How do you get this thing where it needs to be and plugged in and ready to go in time?
Yeah, one of the big challenges that the modular firms have wrestled with is the permitting and inspection. Now it's in a factory rather than on site, so now you have to change the way that the inspection occurs. That was an issue that they were dealing with, and so can you get the checklist for one pod and it works for all of them, or do you have to go and check every one individually, which when you think about it, that loses the entire benefit that they're achieving from using modular, is the efficiency and the time savings. So there's a lot of, from a permitting and the inspection, a lot of innovation that needs to continue to occur for it to really be successful.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was recently at a session where I heard a manufacturer who has entered into that market speak, and he's talked about how he's ramped up his business tenfold over the last year, and could be doing 50,000 units a month, and in the not too distant future, and still not come close to meeting demand for that. So that's it. I think you'll continue to see tremendous growth in that model. Paul, we talked a little earlier about what you saw for growth opportunities. I know that the FMI study suggests that overall construction put in place may continue to fall through 2024, but there are opportunities for growth in metal construction. You talked about some of that. Anything to elaborate on there?
Yeah, so if you look at overall construction, three main sectors. So you have residential, non-residential, non-building. And residential represents around 50% of overall construction spending in the U.S. So with that declining at the rate it is, it brings down the overall marketplace. So taking that out, non-residential is still, it's flat, but as I mentioned earlier, there certainly are bright spots. The big one being data centers. Following that is in industrial. It's cold storage, although we're seeing some warehouse overall with the Amazon effect, and not as strong as it had been in the past several years, but what's helping drive some of that growth is the cold storage opportunity, and then healthcare and education. Those are the big ones on the non-residential side, and then certainly the injection of the IIJA funding on transportation and the facilities there, seeing that already roll into the market. It's been allocated to the states and down to the local level, so we'll see that injection of funding here over the next several years continue to grow. So, and again, it really goes back to the mix of work. So you look at Raleigh or Austin, they're still going with office. There's still a lot of opportunity there in the commercial space, but you go to San Francisco, the office market is all but dead there. And so it really just depends where you are geographically and the mix of work, and that's going to dictate a lot of the opportunity and growth options.
So, Paul, and again, I haven't read the study in a while, but 1% is target growth rate for 24? Is that?
Yeah.
So we're going to look at some, as Paul said, on the commercial side, you're going to see more growth than you would on the residential side as we kind of started kicking this off. But I think it was 1%, and I think between now and 2026, it was only like 1.4 or 1.5.
Right.
So again, continued growth, but not significant growth like we've experienced over the last few years.
Yeah, we see 24 and 25 to be down years, in that a return or uptick really in end of 25 into 26 and 27 is where we see spending kind of rebounding there, particularly on the residential side as well as non-residential.
And I think it's fair to also note that we're talking about volume, right? We're talking about installed square foot, not dollars, right? Because dollars, we had so much inflation and deflation, so that growth is actually 1% on squares. So that is something just to keep in mind as you're looking at building out your budgets for 24.
Brian, you've been participated. I was going to say a victim, but I'm not sure that's the right word.
Nah, it's not a victim.
But yeah, we've seen a lot of integration and consolidation in the industry. Be it people buying, merging companies or vertical integration by some of the vendors, suppliers. How do you see that trend continuing, and what do you think is the impact of it?
Well, I sold my business to Carlisle back in 2017, so I was one of the early adopters of industry consolidation. There's a lot of last names in our industry. So there's a lot of folks that are with very little succession planning, and I'll happily grab a beer and tell you the story about Mike Peterson and I grabbing dinner and bourbons to talk about us buying Peterson. And he didn't really have much of a succession plan. So there's still a lot of last names in the industry. I think there's really positive things that come out of industry consolidation. I think our industry is unique in the fact that it's very fragmented. So we'll have different, I don't know what they're building over here, but it's, I don't know how you can bang on something at a trade show for that long. It's just interesting. It was one of my competitors.
It's a learning session.
Maybe.
They're getting certified, so just that's not bad.
Yeah, let's put the loud boots right next to the seminar boots. So yeah, no, there's a lot of trends happening and positive things that are happening. It's not only on the metal side, but our industry, we have like 200 competitors, right? There's small regional guys that we compete with, and then we're large specifications. So it's a positive thing, Jeff, in my opinion. I think it's necessary. I think what we'll see over the next 3 to 5 years is continued consolidation. We're seeing it on the commercial roofing side as well. We just bought a company called Henry Building Products, which is a waterproofing division of our company now. And I just think there's quite a bit of opportunity, whether it's adjacent industries that we would want to participate in or competitors, just a roll-up of our industry. I'm a big believer in it. It's part of our strategy going forward that we're going to continue to try to spend money. And I'm under continued pressure from my executive team that says, hey, we don't want to tell Wall Street that we're buying shares back. Go get us something to go buy. The challenge is that when you're a small family-run business, sometimes the EBITDA margins don't match up to what you would typically want. So I'm happy to take this offline if anybody has any questions about kind of that process. I've been on both the buy and the sell side now. And when we bought Peterson back in 2019, writing the check is easy. It's the integration part that's really difficult. And so we've learned quite a bit from it, but it's been really prosperous for our employees as well as for our company and shareholders.
Yeah, I just comment on that. So we have an investment banking side. They work with they do M&A, and we work with private equity as well. And so looking pre-2021, average annual E&C M&A activity is about 350 transactions. 21 and 22 had over 600, so we saw a massive increase, particularly on the private equity side. 23 is returning more to that 350, 400 level. It's not so much the volume of opportunity we still see as being there. It's what we're hearing from private equity, in particular, quality of the opportunities. But moving into 24, the private equity side certainly sees a lot of opportunity. One of the big things that they focus on is that continual service piece of it, and they see the multifamily market being rather attractive for them over the next several years, and particularly on the roofing side. So we see that as, just to build on your comment, very favorable.
It's not just us, right? It's not just us as manufacturers. We're seeing talks of U.S. Steel and Cleveland Cliffs, right? And Precoat, right? I mean, you can talk to that one if you want to. But yeah, we're seeing it all across the verticals.
Yeah.
Even stranger in our industry, and we're a very small industry, a niche business, and you have Flynn Roofing going out and buying a lot of metal shops all over the U.S. and in Canada. And then one real strange one that just happened was Tremco bought one of our fabricators, NOW, in Dallas.
Yeah.
So that's a real strange one there. That really took me by surprise, and it's taken a lot of people in our industry by surprise. Why would Tremco come in and buy a fabricator? So, strange bedfellows.
Good, Sean.
I don't have a lot to say there. We were owned by private equity for 13 years, which is incredibly rare. So for us to be under new ownership is a wonderful situation.
That's a safe answer, isn't it? Yeah.
Especially when it's video.
Yeah, I mean, we're also seeing roofing distributors, right? I don't know if you guys are dealing with roofing distributors, but there's quite a consolidation happening there.
Oh.
So it's just happening everywhere, not only in the metal manufacturing side.
Yeah, so I guess I'll turn my attention to the audience, and if there's any burning questions out there. Tony, I know you said you were going to have something, so so I'm sure the panel's happy to entertain any additional questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to the group, just any closing comments. And Brian, I know MCA is very active on behalf of the industry as a whole, and Tom, the MCM Alliance on the fabrication and MCM panel side of the industry, and you've seen great growth not only in that sector but in our certification program and other elements there too. So if anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say that if you're dealing with manufacturers, encourage them to join the MCA. Not to do an elevator pitch on the MCA, but just as a trade association, it's really important that there's an advocacy that's happening on your behalf. And it's really, really important to get all of our competitors in one room with a one voice, one vision type approach to try to grow the use of metal in construction. So it benefits all of us in doing so. It also has allowed a lot of opportunities as far as networking goes. So if there's ever a need for anything that you know that may be happening in the market, the best thing you could do is feed that back to Jeff or myself and make sure that we're aware of trends that are happening that are impacting your business, because that's really where MCA really comes into play. And Bob does a great job on the code compliance side. Think about the codes, right? Think about the story that we can tell on metal compared to competing products. Now, my largest product line at Carlisle is our single ply, which is flat roofing, which is great. However, metal, we've got fire covered, we've got snow loads covered, we've got wind covered, we've got hail covered. I mean, there's so many things that we have running in our benefit, and we're really good at telling the story here at MetalCon, but it's how do we branch out and spread that word, because we do have a lot of competing industries like wood and concrete that are coming after us every single day with much larger budgets. So getting that feedback from our group, I'd strongly encourage you to go onto the MCA website. There's some really great white papers and some technical papers that do you have a question? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Vince.
Yeah.
So a common problem for the industry and in the economy is a skilled quality workforce. Is there any new trends besides it being bad that you guys see? That's my question.
You want to take that?
Yeah. So
great question.
So that's a great question. It's something that we get from all of our clients. And if you go back 50 years and you look at the headlines, they say the same thing. There's a labor shortage or a labor challenge in the construction industry. So we've kind of transitioned to think about it. It's not a problem, because a problem is something that you can solve. It's a characteristic of the industry. There's always going to be challenges with labor. So the firms that we've seen really do well is focus on the engagement side, the retention, and thinking about that it's always going to be there, and how do you address it by knowing it's going to be there and positioning and utilizing your strategy to take that into account, because there's not one day going to magically an association give a new workforce. So unfortunately, we don't have a good answer, other than we've seen firms that are doing it well are focused on engagement, on retention, and making sure they have firms that employees that are staying longer term.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So we built a $6 million training center in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So we have a large training facility, controlled environment, so we can get contractors in, get them comfortable around the tools and the products. But also we've learned to go meet our customers where they need to be met, which is at the job site. So we actually have groups of folks that go out to job sites and train, because a lot of the times we're not going to get to the worker bees at a trade show like this, right? They're not going to come here. A lot of our customers are small roofing companies, so they're not going to make large investments in their staff when their staff may walk out the door for $2 an hour, potentially. So we find that if we hire former roofing contractors, We go out to the job site. We teach them how to work on their job site. We work alongside of them. We notify the owners that we're coming out, and we put them through a rigid test as well. So we work with NRCA on the roofing. What's it?
Roofing Day.
With Roofing Day, but there's also the training component to that.
Yeah,
so
pro certification
the pro certification program. So if you're unaware, there is a pro cert program with NRCA that we've partnered with. We actually wrote the test and created the program. So for standing seam and I think walls. Do we have walls yet?
Walls coming into play.
Architectural standing seam and metal shingles.
So architectural standing seam and metal shingles, and that's something you go right onto the NRCA pro cert site. You can sign up. You can take the test. So it's just pre-qualifying those workers that have that. It's almost like a prerequisite of coming onto the job site. So we've tried to listen to our customers and just identify. Look, I think it's really difficult to identify labor. It's a huge problem, and we have to make sure that we embrace it. We offer a ton of training. There's tons of training here at MetalCon. There'll be additional training at IRE here in Vegas in January. So we're doing a lot of advocacy when it comes to training, but it's really getting the contractor community to accept that training from us as well. So, and for us to listen to the contractor, because you guys are the ones putting the work down. So it can't just be our way or the highway.
Yeah, and I would just add that there's also, there's industry efforts going on across all the construction trades, just not metal construction. To help address this, and we're starting to see, we're all aware of the trend where everybody, vocational schools and shop class went away. You're starting to see a realization that may not have been the best plan, and some of that is coming back into the schools, vocational schools certainly, and also, the construction trades as a whole are out there advocating and lobbying for more resources for this. MCA, MBMA, others participate in some programs, National Roofing Contractors Associations, Roofing Day. I know the Home Builders Association, others, and are partnering on the training programs, but also going to their legislatures and saying, we need more resources to fund these programs to create awareness and participation. The grant levels that's been dedicated towards the vocational schools from Congress has remained consistent for the last 25 years. The dollar number has not changed. And while four-year institutional spending has, skyrocketed. So that inequity, we're bringing awareness to that, to our legislatures, and we're saying, hey, we need to change that, and we need to put more effort forward, because there are great jobs out there in the construction and the trades across the whole.
Yeah, the number one download from our website at metalconstruction.org is the
metal roofing installation manual.
The manual on how to install, and you can go onto that website and download it. It's free for everyone, and it just tells us that there is such a demand and such a need for a resource to be able to help these contractors to do it right. And you can download individual chapters too, which is really nice. So if you got some flashing detail that you want to learn, it's great.
Well, with that, any closing comments? I know there are some headwinds for the industry, but I think there are. Paul alluded to, and others. There's innovation on the horizon. There's growth opportunity if you're focused on the right sectors, and so it's there's opportunity present. But anybody else want to just?
I would say from just the research we've done and looking at the market, although some of the segments are turning down or have less of an attractive growth rate overall, in the research we've done with metal roofing and walls continues to see growth, and the share of metal roofing and walls continues to grow despite segments not seeing as strong a growth. So we see it over the foreseeable future, that continuing to increase in metal, continue to capture share. And that's very much a strong trend that we're seeing.
And the fabricators that I talk to on a daily basis almost, they have certain segments where they're hot markets and they're cold markets, and it's always moving. So trying to hit that moving target is the real challenge for everybody, not only in our industry, but all the industries that we're dealing with. So that moving target is there, but the good part is it's moving. It's not stopping, and it's not going backwards. And I think that's the fundamental positive side that we're seeing in our industry.
Yeah, I'd agree. And as I started, I mean, the year-over-year comps in certain areas are starting to get easier to compare against. In others, it's going to still be difficult for a period. But all in all, I think the adoption of more metal in compared to concrete, asphalt, and wood is it's in our favor.
Yeah, just as a closing comment, I'd like to say that you hear talking to installers and contractors. Going back, 10, 15 years ago, it's getting more and more complex. I have to have, more inspections. I need more test reports. I need more of these resources available. And we tried to respond to that in the association side. But when I was with a corporate entity, and I used to hear my ears filled with sales folks complaining about this, and I just finally picked up the mic, much like this, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, let's embrace the complexity. Let's understand what it is. Let's learn the rules. Let's get better than our competition and exceed our customers' expectations. We're not going to do it by going back how we did business 15 years ago. That's just not on the table. So embrace it and be a leader, and that's what we're trying to do, and hopefully you are too. Again, don't want to make this a commercial. Join us at MCA. You've got your own trade associations as well. Work with them and get out there, be active in that environment, in that code standards environment, and understand those rules. Be better than your competition.
Well, I certainly can't close with anything better than that. So I'll
Yeah,
just say
we're
thank
good.
you for your time this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of the show and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks for being
Thanks
here,
for
guys.
being
Thanks so
here.
much.
I think we all need to go check out what's going on down there.
Yeah, I don't know what they're building over there, but you may want to go check it out.